Hi there, this is Ronnie coming at you with a video. As I'm sort of trying to get my space opera game up and running, I decided to write a little dungeon crawl thing for an RPG that I have called Dungeon Slayers. I have done an overview review of Dungeon Slayers. And I entitled it Mad Melkior's Maze. And it's you know, it's fairly simple. The idea being, or at least the sort of idea and ideology in it, was to take a bunch of first level characters through it. It's not particularly big. 1-2 sessions at most. And by the end of it, the players would have a very good idea of how the mechanics of the game work. And then I can sort of do wilderness things and all kinds of things, but I want to do something that was fairly quick. Having done the work for that, in so much as I've made my dungeon and it's got, you know, bland number of rooms, and I've done my little list of what's in what. And it's the kind of usual mix of monsters and, you know, monsters to fight and treasure to find and traps to avoid and puzzle. Not that many puzzles, to be honest, but, you know, puzzle here and there. I decided to do myself a little project. Dungeon Slayers is not the only fantasy game I own. I own a few. Some I've owned for a very long time, some I've only recently acquired. In two cases, I also have some generic systems, which I've mentioned before, True 20 and Savage Worlds, which can be used for fantasy games. In fact, I have the Fantasy Companion, which is for Savage Worlds, which is expanded rules for running fantasy games using Savage Worlds. So what I decided to do was, now that I've got my dungeon mapped out, this little dungeon mapped out, and what's in what room, I've decided to use that as a template. And I'm going to make Mad Melkior's Maze for each of the fantasy games that I own, with the same general ideology in mind, that it will be an adventure for first level or beginning level characters, and that by the end of the game, again it'll be a 1-2 shot, by the end of it they will have the mechanics of that given system down to a fine art. So I've been sort of, when I've had time, mostly on Fridays, so I don't like doing it here because I get distracted easily when I'm in the house, because my brain just doesn't work at all when I'm in the house. I'm just distracted constantly. So I've been going to my local gaming shop in Hamilton because there's lots of gaming going on, and I can sit down and write. I'm not as distracted. And so far, I've done my Dungeon Slayers 1, I've done my version for Savage Worlds, and done my version for True 20. Today, I did versions for Blue Rose and Dragon Age and Dragon Warriors. I've still to do Palladium. I've done Dark Dungeons as well. I did that on Friday. Palladium will be very difficult. I'm not sure if I'm going to do that one, just simply because it really is brutal at first level. But you never know. The other two, Castle Falkenstein I've still to do for. I will do a version for that, simply because it's an interesting sort of intellectual exercise for me. I don't know if I'd ever run it for Castle Falkenstein, but I'll do a version for it anyway, just because. I'll probably do one for Palladium, although I don't think I'd ever run it. To be honest, I'm not sure I'll ever run Palladium again. I just like having it. It's an interesting system to have now. I don't think I'd ever run it again. It's nice to own, it's nice to have in my collection, but it's strip mine for the odd creature and maybe convert it to some other system that I have. But I think at this point it's more a reference book than an actual game book now. The two that I think, in all honesty, are going to cause me problems for a couple of reasons are Pendragon and A Song of Ice and Fire. And the reason I mentioned those two as difficult are twofold. One, whilst it is very easy with a lot of the other systems to come up with your standard bestiary and fill it full of first level sword fodder a la kobolds, goblins and orcs and equivalents, because some of the games don't. Savage Worlds Fantasy Companion doesn't have kobolds. Slightly glaring error there, Pinnacle. Put kobolds in. Slightly missing, but anyway. And it's been quite interesting to sort of having to sort of change. For example, in Dark Dungeons and in most other systems, orcs are pretty much sword fodder. They're not quite as much sword fodder in Dungeon Slayers. They're a little tougher in Dungeon Slayers, so it's been interesting to do. Anyway, one of the main problems is you don't really have that option with Pendragon and Song of Ice and Fire. So you're dealing with mostly humans. Now that in itself is not a problem. You can just make it a hideout full of brigands, and just use a lot of brigands and errant knights and so on. So that's not a problem. You're really sort of dialing back on the magic as well, so some of the traps I'm going to have to tweak slightly. So that's not really a problem. The main problem, and why I'll probably do it as an exercise, but I don't think I'd actually use the game in itself, although it might be an interesting side quest. I hate using that term, but it's become a de facto term now, so I'll go with it. It's an interesting side quest. The problem with Pendragon and Song of Ice and Fire is that they are really set up for campaign playing. They, unlike a lot of fantasy game sort of generics, where you can run your standard one-shot, you really can't do that with Pendragon or Song of Ice and Fire, or more accurately, you can, but you're not really playing to the system's strengths. The game is very much written with the long game in mind. So little short games, whilst they're doable, it's not really using the system to its potential, or the way it has been kind of mapped out. So that's one I'd like to. So I will do it, but it would be more. It wouldn't be used as a one-shot. Although I suppose just on the basis of by the end of it, the players would understand the rule system in both cases. Yes, there's a lot of combat involved, but combat invariably shows the rules off to its fullest. So there's that. So I am going to do them for that, but I'm going to have to change a lot more. It's been sort of small amendments here and there so far, but for Pendragon and Song of Ice and Fire there's going to have to be major adjustments, which again is a challenge, and as I am doing it as much as an intellectual exercise as it is for any actual practical use, I'm looking forward to the challenge. So far, Mad Melkior's maze is looking good. The Dungeon Slayer's version, which is the sort of template for it, I'm looking forward to running. I just wish I had more players on this one. There's only 2 so far. I really wish I had more, because I've got a feeling with 2 players they're not going to get very far. And that's not because I've front loaded this thing particularly nastily, because I haven't. It's just 2 players, 2 characters is really not very much. But we'll see, they might surprise. So anyway, just thought I'd do a video, just, you know, sort of saying what I'm doing. Thanks for watching, and I'll have another video very soon.